notification that you're recording. There we go. Wanted to make sure that you got that. So my name is Natalie Spencer, and I work with the Critical Language Scholarship Program. So I will try to give a quick overview. I know we have some alumni here who are going to talk about their experiences on the program, and that is far more interesting than hearing from me about the program, but I will give a quick overview and I will share my screen so there's something else to look at. So the CLS program is sponsored by the U.S. Department of State, the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. I work for American Councils for International Education, which is the nonprofit organization in DC that administers the program with the Department of State. So CLS is a summer-only study abroad opportunity. It is for undergraduate and graduate students. Any enrolled student can apply for the program in any field of study to study a critical language. And I'll go over what a critical language entails because they're not your standard list of languages. But the program is fully funded by the US government. So it is a really good opportunity to have on your radar if you're interested in studying abroad. So a critical language is a less commonly taught language. So critical isn't necessarily synonymous with just important, but they are languages that are less commonly taught on US campuses, less commonly taught by or studied by US students, but that are really critical to the way that we engage with the world. They're really important for US national security, for economic prosperity. There's reasons that the government is investing in getting more Americans speaking these languages specifically. And they really are designed to prepare US students, and the whole program is designed to prepare US students to compete in a globalized workforce. So as somebody already interested and involved in international affairs, you all are already got that box checked. The connection should be pretty clear to why you might want to think about studying one of these languages. So we offer 15 of these less commonly taught languages through our program. 9 of those languages require no previous study, so you can be an absolute beginner, have never cracked a Hindi textbook before, that's fine. So those 9 on the left side of this slide are those for absolute beginners. For Arabic, Korean, Portuguese, and Russian, you do need to have 1 year of previous study by the time you go on the program. So because we're entering the fall semester now, if you were taking like Arabic 101 this semester, Arabic 102 next semester, you would have that 1 year of experience by the time you went on the program in the summer. So what we're looking at is what level you're at by the time you go on the program, not at the time of the application. So when we say fully funded, we really do want it to be of no cost to students. We can't pay for your US passport, but we do cover international travel, any applicable visa fees, cultural activities that are provided through the program. And we also provide US undergraduate academic credit through Bryn Mawr College, which is an accredited institution. It's up to you to work to transfer that credit with your home institution, but credit is expensive. And that is a huge benefit of the scholarship, that you do get that academic credit piece covered. And then we do give you a certified ACTFL OPI, oral proficiency interview test score. So you have like a physical certificate to show the progress that you made and to show the level of the language that you're at when you complete the program, which is really valuable if you're using it for employment or for placement testing in a higher language course or something like that. So everything in the program is really designed around intensive language learning. It's not necessarily the type of program where, it's definitely not the type of program where you're going to want to do independent study or have like your complete own schedule and your own agenda for being overseas. This program is if you're really interested in that language learning piece. Each of the institutes that host students hosts up to 30 students, and you're in class for 20 hours a week. All of the program components, all of the things that you're doing are required. It's not like you can choose to go on the cultural activity this afternoon. It is required, and it's all designed to really help you with that language learning. And the language gains that students make on this program are insane. And I'm sure the alumni on this call will be able to speak to that. It's you don't just come away, if you go in as an absolute beginner, you don't just come away speaking like a word or two of the language. You are like having full on conversations in a language after one summer. So it's pretty incredible. And all of that is just built into the way that the program operates. So again, those rapid language gains, huge benefit of the program. A lot of US companies are looking, especially if you're interested in international affairs, a second language is like key. So this is just a huge free way to get that experience. They're just really employable skills. These critical languages are the ones that really can give you a leg up in that competitive job field. Our participants really do build international relationships. Although you're going with a bunch of other US students and building relationships there, you're communicating with people at a host institution. You're living a lot of the times with a host family. You have a language partner who is like somebody more like a peer in the community who's helping you with your homework and taking you out to movies and telling you where all the good cafes and things are. So you really are walking away with like international connections and relationships, which is a really cool thing to be able to do. And then you join this network of State Department alumni. And so there's a lot of resources and a lot of programs that are designed just for Department of State program alumni. So you enter that when you complete the CLS program. And then alumni of this program do also receive non-competitive eligibility. If you're interested in working for the US government, there is no service requirement for this scholarship opportunity. You can want to do anything you want as long as it incorporates the use of one of these languages. But if you are interested in government work, having that non-competitive eligibility hiring status just kind of lowers the bar and makes it easier for a federal agency to hire you if that is your long-term goal. So our program timeline, our application this year will launch at the beginning of October. So we're not quite there yet, but the application will launch early next month. The application deadline will be November 16th. So you'll have about 6 weeks to get through the application process. There's some essays that are required and a whole lot of information that we'll collect from you, but the essays are really the core of the application. After that deadline, we notify students in January of whether or not they progress to a second round of selection. And then the final award notifications go out in March. So it's by March that you would know whether you were going on the program, summer 2022 in this case. Then we promote alternates. A lot of students are really competitive and doing lots of other things. So there's usually a period where people are declining the scholarship and figuring out what they're doing. We promote a lot of alternates during that period all the way through the end of May. And then in June is when students go on the program. It's an 8 to 10 week program over the summer. So you're home by August with all of this crazy language experience and the equivalent of 1 year of a language class in just a couple short months overseas. So that's kind of what the program timeline looks like. In terms of the application, the main thing that we're looking for in these essays is a really clear and specific connection between the language that you're applying to study and your long-term academic and professional goals. So we're not necessarily looking for someone who just wants to dabble in these languages, pick up a few languages here or there. We're looking for the kind of applicants who have chosen a language, have like a really serious interest in becoming a proficient speaker in this language and using it towards some professional goal. And again, our alumni can talk a little bit more about like, what that looked like for them and how they articulated that in an application, but that's a really big piece of it. We also encourage our applicants to really think about what they bring to the table. There's a question that specifically asks you like how you will serve as a citizen diplomat abroad. How are you working to break down stereotypes of what it looks like to be an American? How are you contributing to the State Department's mission of building mutual understanding, which is a really key part of this scholarship. We don't want to send like jerks over there to like have that reputation of the United States, right? We want to send students who understand what it means to be a citizen diplomat. So thinking about what your interests are, what your backgrounds are, what it means to you to be an American student, and articulating that in the application, there's room for that as well. And we encourage you to use all of the room that we give you in the application. We have word limits on everything, and they're there really for you to go all the way up to. So I think a lot of students disadvantage themselves by not taking all the space that we allow. So once that application launches, going through it, looking at all of the questions, making sure that you have hit every checkbox of the questions that we're asking. And then if you are currently on a campus, looking for help on your campus in that community, there are academic advisors, there are writing centers, there are study abroad offices, fellowship offices. I was the type of student who did not like getting help on my work. I was the type of student who didn't like writing multiple drafts of things. Don't be me. This is the type of thing where you do want to have somebody else read it, make sure that everything you're writing is coming across the way that you mean for it to come across. And that means starting on an application early. So definitely watch our social media, look out for that application launch in early October if you're interested, and get started in that process early. At that time, we'll also release an application tips video that we produce every year that walks through the application, like the essay question by essay question, and says, here's what we're looking for in this essay. This is what we want to hear. But in an authentic way as it relates to you. And so I highly recommend watching that video once it comes out. We're really not trying to trick anybody with what we're looking for in the application. We do try to spell it all out, but not everybody uses those resources. So if you're interested and want to be competitive in the process, definitely look out for that application tips video. And so trying to be really short here again to leave time for all of the other great things that we've got planned for the rest of this hour, but you can always reach out to us. cls@americancouncils.org is an email address that us as real people answer every day. It won't just go into a void. So if you have specific questions, you can send those to us. And then again, check out our social media, and I would recommend following us. We'll post there the day that the application drops and let everybody know when that's coming out, since we don't have an exact date to share. And at this point, it's just early October. Following us on social is a good way to make sure that you're in the know. So all of our accounts are there. So I will leave it at that. If we have time at the end for questions, I'm gonna stick around and I'm happy to answer any questions that come in about the program. And I will quit sharing and take it away, Kyla.
Great, thank you so much, Natalie. Very helpful information. I was taking notes. I hope everyone else was. So next up, we have Zane Bradley to present more information about the Gilman International Scholarship Program.
Yes. Okay. All right, so hey everyone, my name is Janae, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the Gilman. So the Gilman is another scholarship funded by the U.S. State Department, and it funds undergraduate student study abroad. So just like a little bit of statistics about the Gilman, we cater towards minority students. So that includes like first gen, if you're a racial or ethnic minority, if you are a student of high financial need, we're definitely looking for students in these categories. And we've sent students to over 150 countries, and over 1,300 schools in the US are represented. So we're pretty spread out. And so the scholarship does award up to $5,000 for the fall, spring, summer, winter, or academic year. So there is some flexibility on when you can go abroad. And there's also a critical need language award. So similar to CLS, if you want to study one of these languages on your study abroad trip, you can gain an additional $3,000 for that as well. And so eligibility, you have to be a US citizen, an undergrad, a federal Pell Grant recipient, and it has to be a credit-bearing program. And there's a minimum of 3 weeks for a 4-week institution and 2 weeks at a 2-year institution. So your program just has to make sure that it is that long. Also, we normally mainly accept countries that are at a 1 or 2 travel advisory level. If it is at a 3 or 4 and you physically want to go abroad, we only take 3 and 4s if it's only because of COVID. If it's at that level because of another reason, you would have to reach out to an advisor to check on that as well. And so we also offer virtual programs. So that is what I specifically did, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But these can be like international scholarships, language programs, and you can also propose your own program as well. And so there's also a Gilman McCain scholarship. So you could gain an additional $5,000 if you are the dependent of an active duty service member. And those are just some of the qualifications for that as well. So same time limit with the time you can go abroad. And so with the benefits, similar to CLS, we also offer non-competitive eligibility. Gilman is not just a scholarship, it's also a community. We really try to emphasize that as well, because you do get access to a scholar network. You could become an ambassador like I am and get to give presentations like these to students. There's also a ton of networking opportunities all of the time year round. So you're never really left alone even after your program, which is really nice. So in my experience, I did a virtual internship with a company in Argentina. I was originally supposed to study abroad in Ghana physically, but it got canceled. So Gilman was really flexible about allowing me to still have that scholarship and using it in a different way. So I really appreciated that. And as a virtual program, I stayed here in the US, but I was still able to immerse myself in Spanish. I was speaking with my on-site supervisors in Spanish, so I got to practice my conversational skills. I learned about my field, which is visual communications in like an international context. And I also got like a really cool micro credential for working remotely across cultures. So that was a cool thing to add to like my resume and my LinkedIn. So yeah, it was a really great experience. Totally different from what I thought it would be, but it still turned out great. And so with the application, there are 2 steps. So there's a student application, and then you also have to get advisor certifications. So the main thing is the student app, which is you fill out your abroad information. There are 3 to 4 essays, and then you just turn in your unofficial transcripts and you select your advisors. So for that first essay, it is the statement of purpose. So you're basically explaining who you are, why you want to go on this specific program, what that program is and how that aligns with your goals, and how you plan on meeting the challenges that you will face abroad, or if you're doing a virtual program, how you plan on adjusting to those challenges as well. And so these are just some of the questions that can guide you through the essay. So for example, like share how you will be academically successful on your program. So if anyone wants like a copy of these later, I'd be sure to pass them along. And the second essay is a community impact essay. So like the last presentation said, a big part of the State Department and Gilman is that mutual cultural exchange. So while you're abroad, how are you going to represent the US abroad? And how do you plan on becoming culturally engaged? So they just want to see that you've thought about that and that you kind of understand that you are going to be representing the US while you're abroad. So these are just some of the questions you would answer in that essay as well. And then a third part of the third essay, which is another big part of Gilman, is the follow-on service project. So when you return from your trip or when you finish your program, you will have to complete a follow-on service project. And that's basically where you just demonstrate how you're going to give back to your community, how you're going to present study abroad and basically the Gilman to either people in your campus or in your home community. So you can write a blog post, you can make a video. I personally started a podcast with my school study abroad office. So that was a really cool and unique thing that I got to do. And with this, they just want to see if your project is feasible. Do you have the resources to carry out whatever your project is? And how do you plan on including your experience into that project? And then that fourth essay, which is optional, this is if you're doing the Critical Need Language Award. So you have to answer, how is this language going to relate to your academic career goals or your overall goals? How are you going to use it in the future? And what are your motivations for studying this language? And so for selection, we really look at the impact of the program destination on your career trajectory. So again, making sure you're not just going to just go, you're actually going to whatever country you're going to because you have a plan on how it's going to fit into your goals. They also look at your community impact and what you plan on doing when you return. Your academic preparedness, the diversity of your background and experiences, and then if you're going to do the language, if you're going to do the additional language study, then what is your commitment to that proficiency? So application tips, the biggest one is to, create a story. You want to tie together your past, your present, and your future career goals to highlight how the scholarship will impact you. Also, start the application early. A lot of people underestimate how much time it really takes to craft a well-written essay, because you do have to meet with advisors. You do have to do multiple drafts. I think I did at least like 4 or 5. I'm not the best writer, so I definitely had to give myself time to go through that process. So that's really important. Give yourself as much time as you can. And then also with your follow-on service project, think about your community, local schools, maybe like a high school you went to or something, or a community group. And if you have a specific talent, that could really set you apart as well. I love storytelling and I like listening to podcasts, so that's why I came up with that one. So if you could do something unique, that would definitely help you stand out as well. And don't forget, if you don't apply, you won't get it. So give yourself that chance anyways. And so for our timelines, there's 2 main timelines. The October deadline is where we're at now. It opened in August and the deadline's going to be in October. And then there's another one that will open in January for March. And so we are on all of these social media platforms, so feel free to follow us there. We do post when scholarship dates are dropping. If there's like a change to the deadlines, we also post those there as well, along with weekly Q&As from other alumni and other ambassadors as well. So if you have any questions, definitely check out our social media pages. And then these are like just 1-page flyers if you want like a short brief of what I just said in this presentation. And I can share these out later if anyone wants them. And yeah, so here's the Gilman contact information. The top email is the Gilman team. So if you have any questions for the official team, you can ask them. And then I also listed my personal email. If you have any questions as an ambassador, I can help you with your essay writing if I need to like read over anything, or if you just have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out. And these are just some other international exchange resources. So like CLS, like we just heard from, and a few others. So yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Janae. Great presentation. And yeah, great to have you, especially as an alumni ambassador. So moving on to our next speaker, we're going to hear from Kyla Harrison, who is a alumni from the CLS program for Arabic specifically. Take it away, Kyla.
Great. Like Kyla said, both our names are Kyla. So, but anyway, like Kyla said, my name is Kyla Harrison. I participated in the Critical Language Scholarship Program for Arabic in IBRI, Oman in 2017. And I currently live in Boston and work as an associate consultant at a social impact consulting firm. And let's see, I went to the University of Texas at Austin, originally from Texas. And yeah, I think, Kyla, what would be helpful for me to like start with? Just like giving an overview of my experience on the program. I know Natalie asked questions about like language gains. So I think there's so many great things that I could say, but I want to keep it concise.
Yeah, of course. I think we would love to hear about your time on the program, how that program prepared you to like expand maybe your future job search, and then maybe some tips for application process.
Okay, great. So I think that I'm not exaggerating when I say that participating in CLS like changed the trajectory of my like life. I think it just prepared me with so many practical skills and opportunities that even go beyond language learning. Well, I'll touch on language learning first. So basically, when I went into college, I wanted to actually like learn a language. I feel like I had met a lot of people who had studied languages, but like didn't actually like learn them. And so I was like, maybe I should pick like a lesser like studied language, like Arabic or something, so that I can have like a smaller class size. And then it turned out that there's like a ton of opportunities, like people paying you to learn the languages that people don't really study. And I found out about CLS that way. And so I studied Arabic for, I think, 2 years no, a year before I went on the program. And I went into the program being like a low intermediate speaker, like just past the like beginner stage. And I left the program as like an advanced mid speaker, which is like a real, like there's basically a scale of like 10 language levels. And so I made a huge jump, and that was like very common for the program. I think that it was the most profound point in my language learning. In my journey learning Arabic. I started learning Arabic in college, had no background with it, and I felt like by the end of the summer I was like speaking it like confidently and felt like I could finally say that I was like pretty proficient in the language. And then the experience was just, it was phenomenal. CLS has such like a great program. I think that I, of course, got great instruction in the classroom, but my memories like aren't from the classroom. In fact, I don't remember doing homework, which I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but like I think that like I just don't remember doing homework on the program. You do have homework, but there are so many great activities that CLS organizes and encourages. There's like, I mean, like hiking, like cool, just like cultural exchanges. I think I went to a couple weddings. Like basically, I just remember doing a lot in the summer, being packed with activities, and that's where I felt like a lot of my language learning came from, was from being in immersive experiences, which is something that I don't know that I can say that every sort of study abroad opportunity can offer. I think for tips for applying, so I think everything that Natalie said is kind of, true. I think being your authentic self and also telling your story and why you want to use the language in the future is important. I think that there are a lot of people that I remember I went on the program with who are very interested in like using sort of like the diplomat route or like foreign policy route. That kind of wasn't me, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't make you like a less compelling applicant if you're not trying to like go and like work for the government. I think that just being able to say how you want to make that language a part of your professional career and a part of your life long term is like the most important part in an authentic way. I think agree with the tip, start early, have people read it. And I think also something that intimidated some folks, like there was a range of study abroad or previous study abroad experience on the program. There were some people who had done like 2 exchange programs before or like studied abroad like 2 or 3 times. And then there were some people who had never left the country. And so their first time leaving the country was to go to Ibri, Oman. And so I would say like, if you feel like, oh, I haven't traveled a lot, like I'm not like interesting enough or like compelling enough, like don't worry about that. I think it's more about like the passion that you bring, and then telling your authentic story is what makes a really compelling application. I also served as an alumni ambassador for the program, so I think that just goes to show how much I really loved it. And I read a lot of applications and helped a lot of people with their applications afterward. And I think that, again, like just really trying to nail like your story and that authenticity is probably the most important part for the application. I'll stop there. Kyla, am I leaving anything out? Is there anything else that you'd like me to share about my experience on the program?
No, I think you got about all of it, but thank you so much. And we'll of course have time for questions later if anyone has questions for Kyla during the Q&A at the end. But thank you so much, Kyla. So next we're going to hear from Simone, who is also a former alumni ambassador for the CLS program, where she studied Swahili in, I believe, Tanzania. So yeah, go for it, Simone.
Hi everyone, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Sorry, my photo or my video was not going through, but nonetheless, good evening, everybody. Yes, my name is Simone Yule. I did the Critical Language Scholarship in Arusha, Tanzania, in the Kilimanjaro region, studying Swahili in summer of 2018. That opportunity came across because I also did another State Department program called the African Flagship Institute that's based at the University of Florida. And one of the things about getting into State Department programs is one can easily lead to the other, because once you get into that spectrum of language and opportunity, you kind of just flow into one. There's Boren, so that's kind of a fast track to that. But yeah, so I went through that process. I had an amazing time. I had, like I said, gone through AFLI, an African flagship program. So I had already had experience with the intensive language environment. So it's the same thing at the University of Florida, where it's a 10-week program. I believe 5-hour language learning days, Monday through Friday, and then cultural immersion programs on the weekends. I know at first it can sound daunting or that it holds a lot. And even for me, I was hesitant to enter into the program. I had to be convinced a little bit. But nonetheless, being able to participate at the University of Florida and then follow up going into Arusha, Tanzania, it did really help me understand, like, this is what it takes to get that language immersion, get that language practice, and just completely falling into it for the summer. I had an amazing experience with my host family, with my fellow CLSers, with my teachers, my professors. And the great thing about CLS is that it's not an individual experience. You're always in relation to someone, whether it's your host family, the other people on the campus that you're studying with, the other professors. So even if you're, let's say, a beginner, I came in at the intermediate level because, like I said, I'd already been studying Swahili for a year. And it is actually one of the languages that you can go into without any language experience. So I just so happened to have that language experience prior. And I was able to create relationships with professors in the program, even beyond mine. So it helped to have more advanced professors. Well, everyone's fluent, of course, but it helped to have that range of opportunity to create, network and just, understand different accents and different cultures. Similar to what Kyla was saying, it's a very interesting experience in terms of your starting point. If you, this is the first time you're leaving the country, or if you're very well traveled, neither of those are really, not necessarily overly positive or overly negative, but it's really just what you make of it. Because some people may say, oh, I've traveled before, but you've never traveled here. You've never done an immersive language learning program here. So I think being really open-minded to the experience and just saying, not necessarily not having expectations, because I'm assuming you want to walk away with that language, with those language and cultural skills, but being able to just say, I'm going to fully immerse myself in these cultural excursions that the program sets aside. I'm going to fully immerse myself into the language lessons. And aside from Kyla, I did encounter some homework from time to time, but really just taking it seriously, because it's one of those programs where it really is what you make it. If you actually study the material and you really do take the opportunity to not speak in English and to put yourself out of your comfort zone and push your friends to also speak in the host language, it's a very gratifying experience, and it really surprises you how much you can learn in that 10 weeks. Like, there are people that didn't know a word of Swahili that left being able to create, have conversations. And yeah, it's very beautiful. On the front end, on the application side, I feel like everything that has been said is very relevant. And for the most part, I think for me, what I got from the application period, or the application portion, was it really shows you, like, yes, you're writing to the CLS board to say, this is why you should choose me. But I think there does come a point where if it's very difficult for you, yes, seek advising, but also be very clear as to why you're there. And why you want to pursue that, because it can be a stressful experience for some. In that, again, it's language learning 5 hours a day, 5 times a week for 10 weeks for this particular program. And it may be your first time learning the language. And it's just, you just have to adapt. So I think really sitting with yourself to say, be very clear as to what you want to get out of this, why this is important to you. And also not being afraid to say, oh, like, I'm unclear, you can bounce ideas off, but I think that clarity for yourself first, as aside from just looking at the application as something to be competitive in, could be really helpful. Yeah, let me know if there's any other questions or any other clarity I can draw.
Of course, thank you so much, Simone. Super helpful advice. And then next up, I guess, is me. Hi, everyone. I'm the other Kyla, and I just graduated from Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana, with a degree in international development and another degree in economics. So I actually received both the CLS and the Gilman, but I received them at the most inopportune time. So I got my CLS I learned the news in February 2020, and then I learned I got the Gilman in December 2019. And of course, in March, everything got completely shut down. And so I didn't actually end up going on the CLS, and that was the CLS just to Tanzania as well, like Simone did. But I did end up still going abroad without the Gilman. And then I ultimately ended up doing my Gilman scholarship online with the US Trade and Development Agency on their Africa team. So as you can see, there's a wide variety of international internships that you can do, and they don't actually have to be based in the United States. Outside of the United States. I did mine with the US Trade and Development Agency, which is a government organization, but did a lot of work abroad. So you can definitely make your program how you see fit. I do think the Gilman is a lot more individualized than the CLS programs, which has its pros and cons. For example, when I went abroad, even though it was not with the Gilman program officially, I did learn a lot about just traveling by myself, individually, and figuring out things by myself abroad, basically like any other study abroad program. And that has helped me in the future. Like right now I'm in Mexico City, not by myself, but with a friend, and just like learning how to navigate the streets and signs and ordering food at restaurants. These are the things that I have learned going abroad with what would have been with the Gilman program. And yeah, along with what Simone said, the application period helps you learn a lot more about yourself, what you want to do, because you have to express that within your own writing. So when I applied for the Gilman, I talked about how I wanted to go to the University of Edinburgh so I could join the Edinburgh Economics Program Club thing, which was the largest one in the UK. And I also talked about how like Adam Smith, like the founder of economics, went to Edinburgh, and how I wanted to learn from his experiences, like teaching there, and like the many economics things that happened. And if you have ever gone to Edinburgh, there are like statues of economists just like all around the city. So it was really interesting to go there and further my economics, which was something I couldn't do at my own university. With CLS, I talked about how I went abroad to Kenya, really loved it, and I want to do work in Kenya as a diplomat. And so Swahili was the next step for me there. So it's really important to not only think about what you want to do for the future, but also find these specific examples in your writing that you can highlight for these programs. But yeah, that is about it for me. And we can go ahead and open this up for Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to unmute and ask, or you can pop them in the chat as well. To get us started, and I'll go ahead and highlight every person or spotlight every person so we can see everyone at once. But someone did ask, how did your study abroad / language learning opportunities help you find a job or influence your career choices in any way?
I could definitely do that. This is Simone. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I actually went directly to the State Department right after graduation due to the competitive eligibility that they talked about. It's essentially a ticket that, I won't say a ticket, but it's a preference based that allows you to, if you were to go on USA Jobs or whatnot, it puts you to the front of the pool for applications. So you're not just going against like thousands in the public, you're going against that isolated competition pool that may be filled with other Peace Corps attendees or participants. I don't want to list all because I'm not sure. And I think it also falls into possibly Army or things of that nature, or service-based State Department organizations. But yeah, that linked directly from my ambassadorship through the Critical Language Scholarship and just the networking through that. So it was, yeah, completely due to that.
Great, thank you so much, Simone. And I guess I can speak a little bit to my experience. I've definitely used my scholarship applications from the CLS and the Gilman to apply to other things, because I took, the time to really think about what I wanted to do in life and how certain scholarship programs could get me to the place I wanted to be. And so now I actually got a job with the State Department, working at the World Fair at Expo 2020 Dubai in the fall. And I see some other people that are part of the same program on this call right now. So hey, y'all. And I definitely think that applying for these programs initially and really doing the thought process, all the work to explain your why these programs are significant to you can help you do that beyond these programs, like in a job interview or with other really competitive things, like even grad school. So taking the time to work through these essays definitely sets yourself up for success, even if you don't actually win the scholarships.
I'm happy to add. I currently don't use Arabic in my day-to-day job, but I think that having that language proficiency on my resume, it came up in every interview that I ever did for jobs, even if the job had nothing to do with the language itself. And I still have pursued language learning on my own because I would like it to be part of my career in the future. But I think there's also another at least for my current role, there are so many people at my organization who have done either CLS, Gilman, Fulbright, one of these programs that I have been able to meet, network with, and that has been a point of connection. So even I feel like in careers that might not necessarily be careers where you take full advantage of the language or apply it to your day-to-day in a job, there is always a cohort of like-minded individuals who might who also have used the language throughout their career and might go back in and out of it. So I think I just wanted to add that perspective of and I think I also just pivoted a little bit after graduation, which is very normal to do, but wanted to add that element of even as somebody who doesn't use my language in my day-to-day job, I've still kept up with the language. I still watch TV in Arabic. I still listen to the news in Arabic. I still have a language partner that I talk day-to-day with. And I have people in my professional network that have also been through these programs that have been able to take advantage of using the language in different parts of their career, even if it's not extremely linear.
Great, thank you. Othman asked a question, is prior experience in language engagement program exchange programs helpful in our applications? And I guess this could be either for CLS or for the Gilman with the language part of the scholarships.
I can talk about CLS a little bit there. I think previous experience, both with language study and with any international travel that you might have, it's not necessarily the fact that it exists and that you've checked that box isn't necessarily a good thing in your application or a bad thing in your application. It really comes down to how you articulate what you made of that experience, how it shaped your goals, what you learned, how you're using it going forward. Basically, it just comes down to how you frame that experience. With the NSLY, the National Security Language Initiative for Youth that was mentioned specifically in this question, that's another State Department funded program like CLS and like Gilman. And so it's a great link because it does show that you can succeed in this kind of rigorous competitive academic program, that you might have some experience with the language that you're applying to, if you're applying for the same language that you studied through NSLY. So those are all good things, but you also have to be at the same time making a case for why the government should be investing in you again, because there is limited funding for these kinds of opportunities. So you really are going to have to demonstrate, I had that opportunity, I took advantage of it, I learned so much about XYZ, and now my goals are even stronger, and I'm going to be a better participant in this program because of that experience. So you really, any previous experience that you have studying a language or studying abroad or traveling abroad, you're just going to want to make sure in these applications to be able to talk about the value of that experience for you, and how it will help you be better on one of these programs. Hopefully that makes sense. And Shani, I don't know if you have anything to add for the Gilman side. I know because we're the same funding organization, a lot of these things do overlap.
Yeah, I was going to say that was honestly a perfect answer. I would have said everything that you said. I would just say anything to add. Every application is so specific to your story. So, for example, I did like a 2-week study abroad trip that wasn't a part of the Gilman. I did that like my freshman year. And I was afraid to put that at first because I was like, oh, I've already been abroad. Are they going to think that, since I've already been abroad, will they like allow me to go again? But it was really in the way that I framed that experience, even though it was like a 2-week program. I kind of explained how that was my first time abroad and how I wanted to gain a longer experience to really immerse myself in a different culture. So it really is about the way that you tell the story and about the way that you frame it. It definitely doesn't hurt to have any past experience because, again, I think Simone put it in the chat earlier, it shows that you've already succeeded in similar environments. And even if it's not like an international environment, if it's like your first time going abroad, if you have any other experiences, like being like a first gen or like being in a situation where, you kind of stand out a little bit and you have to navigate through something that's unfamiliar, you're doing that when you go abroad too. So experiences like that can show that you like kind of know how to succeed. So you really just have to look at the individual pieces of your story and kind of craft them together. And it does take a little bit of time, but it's so worth it because it's really rewarding seeing how like everything you've done kind of like fits together. So yeah.
Great. And another question for you, Jeanne. Elise asked, Elise is looking for an international internship opportunity and interested in pursuing the Gilman for that. And she asked how/where is a good starting place to find an international internship opportunity?
Yeah, so there's so many, and I guess my best answer would be to talk with your advisors in your study abroad office if you have one. I went through a third-party organization. I went through CIS Abroad. If anyone's familiar with that, they offer virtual internships. There's a number of other third-party organizations. You can literally like go on Google and search them. There's just so many, so it's hard to like pinpoint an exact place. But if you do have a study abroad office, your advisors are 9 times out of 10 familiar with some of those organizations. And Gilman does allow you to like propose your own experience. So if you do happen to find an internship and you're not sure like who to contact, definitely contact a Gilman advisor, and I can put that email in the chat again. And they can kind of tell you whether or not that would be a feasible program. And yeah, as well as reach out to me if you have any questions. Since I did an internship, I would be happy to help you find one as well. So.
Great. Another question for you, Jeanne. Do you have any tips for applying to be a Gilman ambassador or for the program?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the application for that. So I think the biggest thing they wanted to know was with your experience with the Gilman, like why do you want to share that experience? Like what is it about the Gilman that makes you want to kind of like present that to other people? So really emphasize how your Gilman experience specifically impacted you. What was it about Gilman, whether it was like an advisor that really helped you, or with your follow-on service project, like how that specifically kind of influenced what you're doing now. I know for my application, I talked a lot about how the podcast that I started with Gilman, with my study abroad office that I did for my follow-on service project, I kind of talked about how that helped, how impactful that was for me interviewing other students on my campus who also did the Gilman and like forming that community. I really emphasized that in my video. So I think that kind of helped. I was surprised I got it too. So, but yeah, it's again, that's just like with your specific story, everything is so individualized, but I would really emphasize on how Gilman specifically impacted your trajectory. So.
Great, thank you so much. And a question for our CLS folks. Do all programs, when in person for CLS, set up students with host families for abroad living? So Natalie could answer that. And then for our alumni, I would love to hear about how it went with your host families if you did have them.
Yeah, so for most of our sites, wherever possible, we do offer host families. We do place students in host families. It can have such a big impact when you're speaking the language at home every day. It really just contributes to all of those program elements and building connections in the country. That being said, there are some sites where it's just not logistically possible. It's just not like culturally possible to find enough families to take in our students in those sites. And so usually if we are not offering host families, there's a few places where we set students up in like apartments with local students. So they still are getting that interaction component. Or we arrange like visits to host families. So you might like stay a weekend or with a host family or something. So we try to facilitate that kind of interaction where it's not possible, but for the vast majority, we do offer host families. Kyla, I can't remember in Oman, did you have a host family? Yeah, Oman's one of those places.
Yeah,
So you can,
I didn't. Yeah,
you
I'm
can talk
happy to
about what
jump
that
in.
was like. Yeah.
Yeah. So we did not have host families in Oman, but we did, well, we did and we didn't. So our language partners were our like sometimes host families. Like we would go and stay for a few weekends with them over the summer, but we lived in apartments, and we lived in apartments with other students from CLS. I don't know if y'all have like changed that for the IBRI site, but I will still say that it didn't affect like language learning. Surprisingly, I think IBRI has like one of the biggest, like the site that I was in has like one of the biggest like language gains overall, like on average, which is funny because we don't live with host families, because people took the language policy really seriously. So even in our apartments, we still were like Arabic all the time, like would call each other out if we were speaking English. So it was a good balance because we did get to see host families sometimes, and be with the family sometimes. They were also our language partners that we spoke with a few days a week, but we still were able to like reach our language goals living with other students in an apartment.
Great. And Simone, did you live with the host family in Tanzania?
Yes. So I had a great host family experience. I was really lucky because certain boxes that were checked with my family were one, none of us were placed alone. So with our program, there's usually 2 people to a house, which is really helpful because you're not, it's not just you and the family, which it may be at other sites, I'm not sure, but having that support. Usually you slept in the room with them, somewhat like dorm style. But having that support in the house, that someone else that, speaks English like you is undergoing the same changes and all that, it felt really nice to have that support in the house. Secondly, personality wise, I really click with my host family. I do know that wasn't the same across all the boards with other people in my program. So definitely be aware that, again, they're people just like anywhere else. So I was lucky that it was a really, really good match, but some people are a lot more, quiet or a lot more talkative than you may be. And I think being true to yourself while also being open to just adapting to that environment is super helpful. Also, I really had a really supportive language, I guess, code in the house, in the sense of my host mom would, if we were trying to dip into English, she would like Swahili, we call it Swahili English, like she would bring us back into Swahili. And it would more so just be because my friend was more advanced than I was. So I would try to use, borrow our English words, and she would just translate it until I understood it. So having that support where it wasn't the sentiment of, not being afraid, like because they're native speakers, not being afraid to use your sentences because it may not sound the way you want it to be. Definitely don't proceed that way. They're aware that you're new, that you're just learning the language. And also I would definitely say, aside from my experience and also just drawing from my other friends' experiences, being respectful and being very honest of how you like to, or any restrictions or any preferences that you have, whether that's dietary restrictions. If you're like, well, I kind of eat a little, or I'm kind of a vegetarian, being very true to, that is very important so that they can place you in a very fitting host family. Because they really do a good job of honoring your preferences for the most part, as much as they can. So I would say taking all that into consideration, being respectful of the house you're placed in, being aware that it may be a perfect fit, but they may be different than you, and being open to that. And also just really appreciating that experience. Because I also was at a university or a language learning center where there's some people that lived on the campus with each other. And aside from Oman, where Kyla was, they actually had regretted not doing a more immersive program with the host family because they were all, speaking English. They were new to it. It was their comfort zone. So I really, really had a great experience and wouldn't expect anyone to hesitate at the experience.
Great, that was great advice all across the board. So we're almost out of time, but we do have 2 questions left from Elise. The first one is, are there any age limits on these opportunities? And the second is, are you allowed to work during these longer term opportunities to supplement the scholarship or grant? And if not, was it difficult to make ends meet?
I can answer for CLS. In terms of age limits, you have to be at least 18 to participate in the program. You have to be enrolled in a degree seeking program at the time of the application. So if you are a student right now this fall, you can apply for next summer, whether you're graduating in the spring or anything like that. As long as you're a student right now, you can apply. There's no upper age limit. So we have students of all different ages. The average student, most of our students are undergraduate students in their 20s, but we've had students in their 40s and their 50s. We have grad students, we have PhD students. So it really is diverse in terms of that upper age limit. And then in terms of working, CLS is really the overseas program, very structured. You are not allowed to work or do any like independent study or research while you're there. Some of that in some countries, it's actually prohibited on the type of visa that you're on. But also it's just, you won't have time to have a job there. We do offer a living stipend. So we're paying for your meals, your housing. We give you, depending on the cost of living in your country, if you have to take public transportation or something like that, that should all be wrapped up in the stipend that we send you over there with. So we do give you enough to live while you're there. If you have to like pay rent on an apartment back home, that's when it becomes extra financial burden that we're not able to assist with. For the past 2 summers, we've had to do virtual programming, which has been an adventure and actually, I think, much more interesting and fun for participants than they expected it to be. We've gotten really positive feedback about the virtual programs. And those programs, because people are at home, it's a little bit different. You're not living with a host family and going on excursions. Some people have been able to have like part-time jobs or take like one course on top of that. So for a more virtual type program, which we might be able to offer again in the future, we'll see what's coming down with all of that. It's a little different, but for the overseas CLS program, work is really not an option in that case. Gilman, I'm not sure if it's a little different. I know there's visa restrictions other places too, but Jane, if you have Gilman tips for working while you're overseas.
Yeah, so as far as the age limit, there aren't any specific ones, but again, you do have to be an undergraduate student. So whether that's at like a 4-year institution or a 2-year institution, that's really the only like age kind of requirement. And as far as working, I don't believe there's like a strict like no working opportunity. If you do want to work abroad, that is something you would have to talk with your Gilman advisor about specifically. But usually the only work that students do while they're doing the Gilman is like an internship if it's like credit bearing, because again, whatever the Gilman is funding, it does have to be a credit bearing opportunity. So those are like the 2 main things there.
Great, thank you. And I can definitely add, when I was abroad, I was not allowed to actually work or have an internship even because of my visa, but I did end up having an online job that I still was able to work. So it really just depends on, I guess, your situation. And if you can find an opportunity online still in the United States, that's definitely something you can do to add some supplemental income. But yeah, that looks like all of our questions. And if you have any more questions, both Jane and Natalie provided some great email addresses that I'll include in a follow-up email for y'all. This information session will also be available online on the BPIA YouTube channel about maybe later tonight, depending on when I get to uploading it. And yeah, thank you guys for joining. And there will be another session like this about Fulbright and Boren coming up next month. So please feel free to join that as well if you want more information on those. But thank you so much. Have a great rest of your night, y'all. And yeah, thanks for joining.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, and thanks for all who joined.